Do you think meal planning is too time consuming or boring, or the thought of doing it is maybe a bit daunting and actually you just don't know where to start with it? Now, this used to be me actually, before I started really putting into practice some of the principles, the strategies, tips, hacks, whatever you want to call it, into practice. Because it actually allowed me to save a lot of time in the planning phase. I was spending less time in the shops. I was spending less money. So my weekly food shop came down. My amount of spend on convenience foods came down too, and I was eating more nutritious food along the way. So I'm going to share with you exactly how to do that. I mean, just imagine eating nutritious food that hasn't taken you hours to prep. You know there's going to be something good tomorrow, and you've got the confidence that it's going to allow you to fuel your specific training. That is what I want to share with you today. And it's even for the people with the busiest of schedules, because actually they are normally my clients. So I want to cater towards you. Let's dive in. Here is my big old whiteboard, and I'm going to share with you my 12 tips. So let's write this: 12 tips for meal planning success. Meal planning success. And what I'm now realizing is that I've taken up loads of space on my whiteboard already. The first tip we are going to do is going to narrow the search, okay? Narrow the search. So what do I mean by this? Narrow the search. If you type in recipes into Google, that's where the overwhelm is going to set in. There's simply so much variety out there. It's going to be like, where do I get started? So what I'm going to recommend is we narrow in on where we search for recipes. We want to have some different recipes coming in. You want to have a few bankers, but really, if we can look at maybe BBC Good Food or Jamie Oliver, and we just use those two recipes to get us started. Within those recipes, you can filter. So you can say, I want a chicken-based recipe. I want a recipe under 20 minutes. I want a limited ingredient recipe. I want a recipe with this vegetable in. It's therefore, you're taking out the billions of things coming in and the overwhelm. You're narrowing it down. It's going to make it a lot easier to select whatever many recipes that we plan to put in to your week. Okay, so this is a really good place to start. Tip number 2. You're going to buy some staples. So having said in my intro that the beans on toast option is coming up too frequently, we want to actually make that work for us instead of just being a complete backstop. So things here that I want you to consider, and I'm going to write it down so that you remember. We want tins. Tins, fantastic. They're good options for protein sources. So this is where the tins of tuna, but actually can we vary that even more? Maybe have some tins of sardines in tomato sauce, something like that. So that we can then, if we're in a pickle, or if we're planning for lunches, we've got options to say, hey, I've got a high quality protein source I can throw into this. We've planned the whole week out and we've got back and we've been spontaneous and something's happened. We want to be able to knock together a meal with something that's in our larder. Okay, I've got a high quality protein source in a tin, be it some haricot beans or some tins of sardines. I've also got a couple of sachets of mixed grains, be that a Merchant Gourmet mixed grains packet or a Jamie Oliver glorious grains, something like that. Just putting those two things together, we've got a fairly nutritious meal. It hasn't taken us any time and it's not being like, I'm either hungry or I'm on Deliveroo. Jars, next one. These things that can live in the fridge, so these are potentially artichoke hearts, they're roasted red peppers. They're things that you can add to these to make it not quite so dull, not quite so boring. So instead of it being tuna with some grains, we can chop up some of those roasted red peppers. We can put in a little bit of artichoke heart in there. We can have some capers just to give it a bit more flavor. Number 3, we want to experiment with our recipes, but have a banker. Experiment, but have a banker. So your bankers are your recipes that you probably already go to, probably far too regularly than you'd care to admit. It's the bologneses that you always make far too frequently. We want to have one of two of those in, because if you're experimenting, you're on BBC Good Food or Jamie Oliver, and you're excited by some of these meals, but actually maybe they don't deliver and they took a little bit too long and you're like, oh God, I put a bit too much time into cooking that and I want to do something else next time. If we've done 5 of those, or maybe 4 of those across the week, we're going to give up on this whole process if we haven't had the success that we're after. So we want to experiment so that we can ultimately be building our bankers, because how otherwise our range of bankers is going to be very low. So we want to experiment, but we want to have some of these in the week. So 2 or 3 of these, which are our go-to. We know they're going to work. They're high reward for little effort. Want to better fall back on these. Number 4, we are looking for flexibility. So oftentimes people don't meal plan because it's, but James, my life is so unpredictable. So actually, okay, let's try and plan for that. So instead of planning 7 lunches, 7 dinners, 7 breakfasts, and it suddenly feels like you're shackled to this meal plan, plan in a day, a meal where there's no plans. So allow you to be spontaneous, so that actually you might have to move some dinners to a different day if you need to, so that you can go out for dinner. You can do something different and it's not going to drastically affect your plan. Number 5, we are looking for variety. Variety. So this is one of the absolute bits of gold why I want you to meal plan. I'm sure you've probably heard about the eating 30 different plant foods. We want to have that to help our gut. We want to be eating a range of different color. Eat the rainbow. Yes, all of that good stuff. How do we do that? How do we ensure that we do that? We plan it. The Benjamin Franklin quote, that's fail to prepare, prepare to fail. Okay, preparation, planning. So we're able to plan in variety. Now, what might help you with this to help speed the process again? When you're planning your week, you're planning your dinners, for example, I want you to consider the carbohydrate element, because hopefully we're going to be having some form of slow releasing carbohydrate in each meal. If we're varying each one of those day to day, then suddenly it narrows our search. It makes it easier. So if we're having pasta one day, if we're having rice another day, if we're having potatoes, if we're having a wrap or a bread or fajitas or something like that, suddenly we've gone 4 days, we've had a different carbohydrate element. Then we've had couscous, we've had quinoa, we've had a different grain. It's going to make it easier to vary it. It's going to narrow the search down to speed things along. And you're going to be getting in different fibers, different micronutrients along the way. If you do that, and then you also vary your protein option element, so be that animal, fish, different type. If it's more vegetarian sources, okay, we're using tempeh, tofu, we've got different beans coming in, and we're using lentils. How are we varying these two across each recipe? Then suddenly we're narrowing the search. It's just going to speed things along if we know that different things are coming in on different days. Another element here in the variety is color. So more often than not, people are like, James, I eat the same breakfast every single day. Because that's good, because that's fast, because I don't want to make anything slower for you, if the template is working well, think about what you can add to it. So color is going to be an easy win in the form of fruit and veg. So if you've got something that works, James, I stand by my bolognese, great. Let's add some color in the form of a vegetable side dish to it. Can we just pan fry some tender stem broccoli? Have that. It's not going to take any extra time, but we're going to get in some more nutrients. Can we add some different variety of fruit to our porridge, to our soaked oats, just to expand the range and the variety of food that we're getting in? Tip number 6, inspiration. Inspiration. Very different there with my capitals. What do I mean by this? Okay, so we're taking inspiration potentially from Jamie Oliver, BBC Good Food. Where can we also get inspiration to keep the search narrow so that it's easier to find the recipes that we're looking for? And I'm sure you've probably heard, James, we want to eat seasonally. How do we do that? So in the notes on this video, I'm going to put a link to the website called Eat the Seasons. You there, just click on the month that you're in, and it's going to give you all the fruit, vegetables, meat elements that are in season in the moment. If you start eating seasonally, it's going to allow you to have variety across the year. It's also going to narrow your search and speed things along, give you that little bit of extra inspiration. And actually, I haven't said this yet, but number 12 is the absolute key one. It's going to allow you to put all of this into practice. So we need to make sure we get to that number 12. Number 7 though, themed weeks. I'm not sure if you've heard of this. I mean, it's fairly self-explanatory. What a themed week is again, to refine the process. So that if you know that Monday is going to be a meaty Monday, you've got maybe you're eating more flexitarian, but you still want to have some meat, that's the day that you have meat. Or potentially, you don't have to do it with alliteration, Mexican Monday. We used to do a Mexican Monday, we'd either have like a fajitas or enchiladas, quesadillas, and it allows us to have a variety of different beans coming in. Then if you know that, right, I need one Mexican recipe, let's just quickly find that, search on there, boom, boom, going in. It doesn't then open up a huge range. So it's, again, restricting the range. Let's do a few more examples. Tuesday, tofu, tempeh Tuesday, so a different protein element. Wednesday, could we do like a Western Wednesday? Maybe we do a healthy version of a burger or some sort of like Italian dish. Thursday, could we go Eastern? So maybe we have a curry or more Thai flavors there. I always think if you consider different cuisines when you're theming, instead of just doing ingredients, it's going to allow for a wider range of flavors, spices, different ingredients. Fishy Friday, another good one. Number 8. If we eat out, let's plan it in. Eat out or takeaway. So instead of the takeaway being the last resort, that I've got nothing in, let's just, what do we want? Because in that moment, you're probably hungry, you're probably time poor, you're probably frustrated. Your body is probably going to guide you towards wanting to have probably very hyper palatable foods, energy dense foods. Whereas if you plan it in and then you're able to look forward to it, it's actually going to foster a better relationship with the food there. You can still eat something hyper palatable, but then you're more likely to look forward to it, eat it in moderation, and not necessarily overdo it. By planning in time to eat out or take away, and actually planning that in, it's going to reduce the amount of shopping, cooking that you have to do. So it gives you a bit of a food break. So that's quite a nice one. Number 9, we are gonna consider a soup option. Now bear with me on this one. What I mean here, if we are putting in lots of different color, if we're experimenting and there's different vegetables coming in, often it's quite good to have a soup maybe at the end of the week as a sort of tidy up dish. So if we're making some sort of vegetable soup and there's bits of vegetable that's left over, instead of going to waste, we can blend it up, we can cook it, we can put it in a stew and blend it into a really tasty soup. So it's sort of an all-encompassing save all recipe, that one. Also works really nicely then for lunches for remaining days. So again, less prep, it's a good one to do in bulk. Number 10 is vegetable size. Vegetable size. So if you are planning and you're saying, actually, I've narrowed the search down, it's winter time, I know that butternut squash is in season, I want to have something like that, but there's only 2 of us. This recipe doesn't require a whole butternut squash and you can't really get half of one. Okay, what am I going to do with that second half? We need to plan that in. So this is where potentially then 3-4 days later, you do a butternut squash soup recipe. If it's pumpkin, the same sort of thing. We need to consider the vegetable size. Tip number 11 is sport nutrition. So actually this is very much my bag. Sport nutrition. So what do I mean by this? This is taking the time to consider when you're training, what type of training that you're doing, and making sure that your lunches, your dinners, they align from a carbohydrate standpoint. Okay, so that you're not planning the fish and veg meal on a Monday after you've done high intensity interval session for 90 minutes, because that's when we want the carbohydrate to be high. So that's when we plan the big pasta dish, the pasta bake, for example. That's just whack it in, got no time because we're spending so long training. We can then have a nice high carbohydrate meal when we get home. Also considering lunches and snacks as part of this. So this really comes down to the flexibility. We need to ensure that we've got some dried fruit, which is one of our staples, that then allows us to say, actually, I want to do a park run. I'm gonna take some dried fruit for that so I can fuel it efficiently. Number 12, this is the most important one. And this is gonna enable you to put all of this into practice, because it's all very good knowing the theory and all of these tips and tricks and hacks and stuff. But unless we do this, it's not gonna work. So I'm simply gonna write time, plan for time. Instead of hoping that your meal planning is going to happen by itself, what you need to do is put a time and day of the week into your calendar, block it in on Apple Calendar, Gmail, whatever you want to do, put it in, set a recurring alarm so that it's like, what's happening? It's Sunday morning at 11 a.m. Like, what's this alarm? Oh, James said I should put an alarm in to remind me that this is the time that I'm going to plan. Because we're trying to save time here, and you will, because this is going to speed the process of planning. You're going to be spending less time in the shops. The meals, the recipes are going to be quicker and easier because you can plan in recipes which are shorter when you don't have as much time. But we have to invest some time up front. Now this will seem like I've got to put in 10, 20, 30 minutes max, but we need to find that time and we need to plan it in. I would highly recommend doing that at a time when you're not hungry. So maybe it's after dinner when the kids have gone to bed, maybe it's after brunch and you've got that little bit of extra time to then say, right, who do I need? Maybe that you'll cook and shop with someone. If you want to engage the family, get some ideas to help inspiration. Put that time, put that into your calendar, and that's going to mean that you are able to put all of this into practice. Now, if you are at the start and you're like, I'm a bit daunted, I'm not quite sure what to do, I want you to download one of these. There'll be a link in the notes. This is just Nutrition for Energy Meal Planner. Very, very simple. Days across the week, breakfast, lunch, dinner. Now, I want you to write in what you're eating. If you currently don't do anything, I don't want you to think, God, I've got to do 7 days. Just do a couple. Let's build this habit. Let's nurture it. If you already do a couple, let's maybe try for 5, 6. Work on those different dinners. If you want to theme it, go for it. Be creative, experiment, put in those different ones. Consider how long you've got on each of those days based on different commitments, and then choose recipes that align to that. But as another little tip, maybe give yourself a little bit extra than what they often say, because sometimes recipes like some of the Jamie Oliver, for example, they may not. Maybe you've picked up one of these recipe books and it's like meals in 15. They probably take 20, 25 minutes. So allow yourself that little bit of extra time, but plan them in for when you've got that time. Put your snacks in. What you then need to do, click into the recipes, put the ingredients. Definitely should have printed this off as a double-sided. Put the ingredients list, what you need to shop. Do it as a hard copy. It's a real faff to actually be on your phone, flicking through, opening it up when you're in the shop. So have a hard copy, fold it up, it's there, it's ready to go, got your shopping trolley, boom. Then, once you've got this, and you've done it for 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks, okay, we've started slow, we're building it out, you're starting to get your bankers and they're expanding, then it'll get to a point where you think, just don't have time this week. You can reach for one of these, be like, actually that week was pretty good. Flip it over, hey, I just need to go to the shop and order that and we'll do that week again. Ideally, we are trying to vary it week to week and eat seasonally and all the rest of it, but give yourself a break every now and again, and that half an hour that you were putting into the planning, you've now got for free. I really hope that even a couple of these points have been like, that makes so much sense. That's going to speed things along for me. If you like this type of content, then feel free to give my channel a subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next video.